most important and relevant questions in contemporary times in the internal security and international arena is related to terrorism and counter-terrorism strategies. In this light, I have brought to you one current affairs questions that also links to some traditional areas and something related to current affairs, right? So the question states, in the context of recently announced BRICS counter-terrorism strategy, analyze the need for multilateral initiatives to counter terrorism. All right, let's read the question once again to understand it in a deeper manner. In the context of recently announced BRICS counter-terrorism strategy, analyze the need for multilateral initiatives to counter terrorism, right? So analyze the need is the important part on which there is stress of the question. And the context in which they have raised the question is the BRICS counter-terrorism strategy, right? So this is the question. But to be able to deal with this question, I would like to quickly empower you first about what this counter-terrorism strategy was and what is the need for counter-terrorism and multilateral initiative in the same. And after that, a quick discussion on that. Then we will get into what are the kind of mistakes that one can do in this type of answer, right? Mistakes. And then we will also understand what are the various ways to write a good answer. And after that, I will also demonstrate you an answer on the same. Now, these are the times when we see increased domain of terrorist activities and new kind of terrorist activities. We have seen science, technology, and new kind of gadgets being used in committing terrorist activities. And this was the drone that was found in Jammu, which was about to explode, right? Then we see terrorism, which is linked to narcotics, to drugs, to human trafficking, right? And this is happening all international, right? Cross border, not only in India, but in countries adjoining the space. We are between the Golden Crescent and the Golden Triangle, that is in the Southeast Asia, right? So one in the west and one in the east, and in between is our country. And we are definitely disturbed because of this. This is the picture of Yaqub Memon. He was found in Nepal, and then he was brought back to India so that he could be later tried for committing terrorist activities in our country, right? So this happened in Nepal. This indicates that international alliance is mandatory when we want to handle terrorism. The drone that was found in Jammu, it has links to cross-border issues, right? Not only that, when you look at some important data related to ISIS fighters, many of the fighters, they did not come from just Israel. They came from across the world. And you see the colored map, right? The maroon and the orange and pink color that you see, these are the places from where the terrorists have recruited themselves, right? This, in fact, shows that ISIS fighters were from around the world. There is definite linkage between various countries as far as terrorism is concerned. Not only that, let's proceed to understand about digital terrorism, right? Cyber security and cyber threats. This is all cross-border. These are the times when we are seeing increased violations in cyberspace, ransomware attacks, 3 times increase in ransomware attacks, right? It is a question in itself, right? And therefore, if this is cross-border, we need cross-border cooperation as well. And that is one place where Interpol, international police, is operating, right? International police is associated by different police investigation agencies of different countries, and that is how they operate across border, right? One good example of how cross-border anti-terrorism activities work is demonstrated through India's activism in Myanmar. We are talking of the surgical strike that happened in Myanmar across border with the help of Myanmar government and their permission, and India successfully infiltrated and committed a surgical strike in Myanmar and later in Pakistan as well. What is this? This is all demonstrative of cross-border effects, cross-border and international associations while dealing with terrorist activities, right? So getting back to the question, see, these are some of the various dimensions that could be included in the answer, right? Now, if you look at the question again, it says, in the context of recently announced BRICS counter-terrorism strategy, is the question, my question to you is the question about BRICS counter-terrorism strategy? No, it is not. It is only presenting in light of this counter-terrorism strategy, talk about or analyze the need for multilateral initiatives. So we are going to talk actually about the multilateral initiatives and what is their need. And we will also give examples, right? So the common mistake that one can actually do is talk about BRICS counter-terrorism strategy. We will talk about it in very short, right? In maybe 30, 40 words in the beginning, and then we will get on to the need of this multilateral initiative in counter-terrorism strategy, right? This is the main focus of the answer. Around 3/4 or 4/5 answer, 80% of the answer should be around the second part, right? So this is the common mistake that people can do. They start talking about BRICS and what is the requirement of counter-terrorism through BRICS. Not that. The answer is in the second part. This is one. Another thing that people do is people talk about theoretical measures, or we will get on to extending one aspect of the answer. For example, digital technology, extension of that. Drone technology, complete extension and writing of article on that. Cross-border terrorism, right? Or ISI as a complete representation of that. We need diversity of points and also their examples, appropriate examples. And this is what will empower your answer, right? So let us look at an answer right now, which is going to talk about this strategy to counter terrorism internationally, right? So the question here, and before anything, I would like to present to you an overview of the answer, how the answer actually looks in optics. How does it look, right? So this is a 2-page answer, right? And this has got one introduction, and after that, need for multilateral initiatives. That is the main heading, under which there are 7 points, right? And then there is a conclusion, right? A conclusion, a small conclusion of 3 lines. And also you see a small block here. This block talks of components of counter-terrorism plan. This plan is nothing but what BRICS had initiated for itself, right? So before making a plan, it also researched, and it made a plan for counter-terrorism on these specific parameters. Right, so we have addressed BRICS component as well, and then we also have a complete introduction and conclusion, and we have a body with 7 points and examples, right? So this is going to serve by the structure, looks good, this is going to serve the purpose, but we will have to get into the answer to understand if the specifics are good enough or not, right? So let us quickly understand what is the specific, right? And every time I want myself to read the question, I want you to read the question, I want us to understand that every question has a different context in which it is asked. So the context of this question is the analysis of need for multilateral initiatives. Kyun chahiye initiative multilateral, right? So we have to justify this every time in every point. What is the requirement of multilateral initiative, right? So how will we begin the answer? Let me read the answer first. Terrorism is an ever-growing threat that has jeopardized peace due to its transnational and cross-border ramifications. To be able to effectively curtail terrorism, BRICS countries have evolved a counter-terrorism strategy under India's leadership at its 13th summit in 2021. Right? So, since this question was asked in relevance to the current affairs, right, BRICS meeting, India chaired that meeting, and this was the 13th BRICS summit. It was chaired virtually, and India, under the aegis of our country, India, all the BRICS nations, they resolved to have a counter-terrorism strategy, right? So this is the news, and we are going to use only the name of this news to present our answer, but the answer is not going to be mainly on this news. Answer is about the different ways in which multilateral initiatives must be operational against terrorism, right? So look at the first statement. It says terrorism is an ever-growing threat, something about terrorism we have mentioned, that has jeopardized peace due to transnational and cross-border linkages. See, now this is important. I have straight away directed the focus of this answer towards transnational and cross-border. Why? Because we are going to talk about associations, global associations to work against these. If the terrorism question was about digital technology, I would have said something else. I would have said that terrorism has a different domain, different dimension presented in the contemporary era. It is digitization of terrorism, right? So that is what I would have presented in the first line itself. So I'm hitting the nail right at the word go. Transnational and cross-border, I've given the complete context in which I am going to continue the answer, right? So this is the first statement. And the second statement says, this is right about the context in which the question was asked, right? So BRICS countries have initiated under India's leadership this strategy. After that, I have also mentioned all the 5-6 important strategies under which the terrorism plans have worked for BRICS. Not only for BRICS, this will work for all the nations, right? So therefore, this is a common strategy. Memorize it. We are talking of what? De-radicalization, combating terrorism, that means the actual combat, and then terrorist financing, misuse of internet. Not only that, then we have curbing travel and border control, right? Physical border control and protection of soft target and capacity building, right? So these are the important parameters in which BRICS also have worked and formed the strategy of counter-terrorism. All the other countries also do the same thing, right? So do remember them, and this provides credible introduction to the answer. This also ensures that the examiner starts to look at the answer because there is something different, they see, oh, there is a diagram, there is something attached. That is how. Now, and here begins the main body of the answer. It says, need for multilateral initiatives to counter terrorism, right? So this is the heading, need for multilateral initiatives. The first point says, globalization of terrorism, right? Globalization of terrorism under blocks. With better physical and digital connectivity, terrorists can easily travel, influence, build support, and impact internationally. Hence, anti-terrorist international cooperation is a prerequisite, right, to maintenance of peace. Now see, I have proved that since this is happening, since terrorism is happening in a digital manner, better physical connectivity between terrorists, right? Therefore, we need international cooperation because it is happening cross-border, right? And now I have given the example also. The case of David Headley involving India, US and UK. Now this is a transnational activity, terrorist activity. David Headley, he was a Pakistani national, later converted into American national, and then he also, ran terrorist operations. He surveyed the whole country, especially Mumbai, for the attacks of 2008. So India, USA, UK allied. They had this interrogation of of David Headley. And this is a good example placed at the right place, right? So this provides credibility to the point. Second, again, I will serve the need for international organizations to counter terrorism. Scalability of technology. This is my second point. It says use of high-end technology and digital equipment devices, virus as weapon by terrorists, call for concerted scientific frontiers by all countries. See, it says since high-end technology is being used, digital equipments, viruses are being used, so all the countries have to get associated. So CERT-in, that means Computer Emergency Response Team in India, and Interpol coordination. This is a must, right? So that digital coordination between both the parties and internationally happens, and therefore we are able to avert terrorist activities, right? So again, scalability of technology has happened. We also have to scale against terrorism, right? This is the example. Third point, radicalization of youth internationally. See, if I present radicalization of youth, it is happening, that's fine. But what is the agenda that is striking the question? International radicalization of youth. It is happening if this is disturbing multiple number of countries. The solution lies at aligning and associating with multiple number of countries, right? So, therefore it says, the statement says, being faced by many countries, it needs a common platform and solution to address the crisis. Example, recruitment of ISIs. Simple, from South Asia, UK, France, all around the world. So good example used here. Fourth one is cross-border issue, right? So here it says disturbances in Kashmir often have origins in Pakistan and Afghanistan. See, and terrorists in Northeast have hideouts in Myanmar, Bangladesh, etc. Right? Cooperation with neighbors enables smoothened and integrated operations against terrorism. See, so example is embedded in the sentences itself, and the point rightly strikes at the need for multilateral cooperation here, right? Very well put point here, right? Cross-border issues, right? And even in these days, we see if there are increased number of terrorist activities happening in Kashmir area, it is because of Afghanistan coming back to power and Taliban trying to getting associated with Pakistan and having more number of attacks here. Simple, right? So we need cross-border associations with who? With countries, our neighbors itself to begin with. 5. Curtailing international transfer of terrorist finances. See, terrorism financing is one major thing that one needs to curtail. Hawala transactions, right? Drug peddling, and then we have human trafficking, all of them. Not only that, preempting terror strike. Preempting, what is the meaning of preempting? That means before it happens, we understand that it is going to happen. We try to curtail it, we try to contain it, we try to even curb it. So preempting the terrorist strikes, this can happen only through data sharing. This can happen through assistance to each other, right? Also, extradition, for example, extradition of David Headley, that was not possible, but extradition of Yaqub Memon happened. We are trying to extradite other people who have offended, in terms of economic offenses also, right? But in terms of terrorism, we need some extradition treaty also. This needs international cooperation, right? So good example is now international cooperation here is Pakistan under FATF list and extradition of Yaqub Memon, right? So trying to curtail international terrorist financing, Pakistan is under FATF grey list. Very simple. Another point, international pressure groups. In case there are more countries having some pressure on another country, that has more impact as compared to a single country in having some kind of sanctions, right? So when European Union has a sanction on certain body, Pakistan or ISIS, then the pressure is more, and that is why we need international cooperation. Jointly, there are more power as compared to a single power by single countries, right? Another point which has struck the nail. And then we have drug and human trafficking internationally. This is happening inside the country also, but we are talking of international issues here, right? So we are linking this to the question. So these allied activities to terrorist aid to terrorist financing, and there is a need for collective action from the countries. Example, India and Pakistan both are affected by drug peddling, right? Because India and Pakistan both are at a place where we are troubled by the crescent, and then we have the Golden Triangle, right? And in between them, Golden Triangle are countries in Southeast Asia. We have Myanmar, Thailand, Laos, and Golden Crescent. We have Iran, Afghanistan, and Pakistan. These are the places where a lot of poppy is grown, and then it is transported all around the world. Is it grown in India? No, hardly anything. But it is transported to India. It is also transported to Pakistan. All these countries need to get associated with themselves and work in coordination. This is what is presented in the point, right? And good example. And then it concludes, the answer concludes by saying multilateral initiatives like FATF, Financial Action Task Force, which was initiated by G7 economies, also under the care of OECD, and RATS of SCO, that is Shanghai Cooperation Organization, are working relentlessly towards the common goal of eliminating terrorism globally. See, so at the end, I have given examples of the international organizations working, right? And in between, I have told about the need for all international cooperation. So I presented 7 points, and all the 7 points have got associated examples also. This is how you can not only provide the analysis. See, every time I have provided the analysis, in what terms? I have provided that terrorism is a global phenomena of multiple dimensions, and there is a requirement of association. Example, terrorism is a digital phenomena, cross-border phenomena, and it requires international cooperation. Example of that. Terrorism is a phenomena that involves neighbors, therefore international cooperation, and then example. So this is how you got to hit the nail in the coffin every time, and then this is where you reach the answer, right? So the common mistake, as I mentioned, would be to keep explaining about BRICS counter-terrorism strategy. That is not it. The common mistake would be to just explain theoretical points, random theoretical points, generalized points, and then not giving specific examples. Another common mistakes could be about expanding one aspect of terrorism, expanding only digital terrorism, expanding only the terrorism that links to certain elements, conventional devices, right? Conventional terrorism, right? Terror threats, but not talking about digital terrorism, not talking about the latest equipments, gadgets, and devices, right? Not talking about examples. So this is how these mistakes have to be avoided. At the end of writing answer, you have to note one important thing. The answer must end in a limited number of words. That is the reason I have presented the whole answer in 2 pages only. 2 pages, that is ideal. And in case you have a lengthier answer to write, you have to expand these points. The points will remain largely the same. You have to expand a couple of points, maybe missing, but the structure should be followed in the same format. Not only that, the presentation has to be in such a way that when you write a point, the highlight of the point should be underlined or be put in a square box. Try making one presentation or at the front page itself. This will be more catchy, and you have to ensure, you have to get into the habit of doing this, because it will not happen by accident. By accident, you will put something irrelevant in the form of image. That is not required. You have to put something relevant very much to the core of the answer, and then you have to also continue the answer alongside, right? And having a good introduction and good conclusion will be an icing on the cake, providing extra marks to you, right? So an answer like this will fetch you a very good marks. For this, all you need is more practice, and try attempting this question again by yourself, right? After having read it, it will also help you to memorize whatever we are speaking of. After that, you will be able to at least have those key points in your mind, and also will be able to have a format in which you can write the answer effectively, right? So here we solve the question in the context of recently announced BRICS counterterrorism strategy. Analyze the need for multilateral initiatives to counter terrorism.